a boxing betting expert.
I know, David.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He really gets into the nitty-gritty of this whole thing.
Nick, this is a bit of a PS, but we're going to put this at the start of your video. So we spoke last week with a very entertaining and informative chat. But one thing I forgot to mention that I wanted you to talk about, because I think you've got quite a close, I'm going to call it, relationship with Alexander Usyk, one of my all-time favorite fighters. We spoke for an hour last week, and I forgot to question you on that. So correct me about that relationship. Can you first of all, what do you think about Usyk as a fighter?
Okay, I wouldn't call it a close relationship. I wish it was, but there's a link there. As a fighter, he's the best heavyweight of his era. I think most people would believe that, agree with that. I think he proved that by beating Tyson Fury. I'm a bit concerned as to what his next fight will be, because I don't really see anybody giving him much of a challenge. I think he put Daniel Dubois away with relative comfort the first time they met. So I don't think that's a fight that grabs the audience, especially especially in America. But yeah, at the moment, he's the man, and I think he'll be the man for a while. I think he'll choose when he's not the man. He'll step back before somebody takes it off him.
So two things. Where do you put him in the pantheon of greats and heavyweights?
Well, as we discussed last week, the pantheon of greats has to include people who, from many, many years ago. Is he in the top 10? In my opinion, probably not.
Okay.
I think even in more recent years, is he as good as Lewis and Holyfield and Tyson? I would personally say probably not. Technically, yes, but the power and that they had was unreal.
Okay, and so that comment about him, he will only be defeated by himself. Are you not concerned that as he's getting into like 38 and a half by the time his next fight, potential signs of slipping?
Maybe. I mean, age catches up with us all, but the reason I say himself is that he comes across as a very intelligent man who is family focused, wider interest than just boxing. And so I said what I said because I think he'll walk away before he's sent packing.
Yeah, I hope so. I think that's a good thing. So it's not a close relationship. You corrected me on that. What is the relationship?
Well, it's an interesting one because it came about by complete fluke. But one of our global gambling news clients, very valued, is a Cyprus-based company called Great Tech. That's GR8 Tech.
Yeah.
And they're basically a sports book and iGaming technology developer. And they have a range of products, odds feeds and iframes and CRM and all that. And they have a Ukrainian background.
Yeah.
And obviously that was an initial connection, but the Ready to Fight app, which I'm sure you and your listeners are well aware of, superb app for anybody that's into boxing and actually anybody that's inside boxing, co-founded by Alexander and his management with a range of ambassadors from Maurizio Suleiman and Michael Buffer to Amir Khan, and very, very good app. And recently, I think just at the start of the year, Great Tech formed a collaboration with Ready to Fight, which Alexander fronts. So that brought us into his realm and into contact with him.
Right.
And it's an amazing partnership because it lends itself to marketing excellence. I mean, their strapline is Alexander the Great, which is, a copywriter's dream. And so we've been very fortunate that we have some access via his team. We can gain some insight. We get him answering our questions on the relationship between iGaming, sports betting, and live sport.
Yeah.
And obviously Ready to Fight's ethos is to blend technology and boxing and to help boxers and boxing fans.
So do you have a direct contact with him, or could you?
At the moment, I am one man removed.
Yeah.
I was two men, one woman and one man removed, because initially I went through Great Tech into them, but
Mhm.
when I was in Barcelona the other week, I met with their team, and I've exchanged a few messages since, and sent Alexander a couple of questions to answer, which have very generously come back answered.
Oh wow.
So that whether it's directly by him is highly debatable, but obviously my interest and our interest is the synergies between the technology and betting and elite sport.
That's superb. And so does that mean, will you be privy to sort of breaking news before, next opponents and stuff like that?
We'd all like to think so, wouldn't we? It was I was chatting with his team in Barcelona, and I expressed my views, as you know I'm want to do, and the guy who is his chief visionary officer, whatever that means, said, "Oh, you have very similar views to his own sports team,"
Oh,
which
wow.
was flattering.
Right.
But yeah, I would doubt that we'll get insider information, but you'll know about it if you do, because I'll be calling you up and getting you to weigh in heavy on the following.
Well, I hope that happens. That's awesome. All right. I don't actually have that app. So just describe what the app does.
His app, Ready to Fight, is basically his management was struggling to find sparring partners initially, and they found the whole process really painful. So they decided to set up an app that provided people in the boxing industry as well as fans with a range of information sources. So it has got on the app, excuse me, I'll have to check, Spar Finder, analytics of fighters, advice from trainers and fighters, and then in addition to that, various modest commercial opportunities.
Okay.
I mean, look, if he's setting himself up with a second career, all sportsmen should do that. Another string to his bow.
Yeah, great.
I think he's very choosy, though, Alexander, about who he partners with.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Because he's passionate about his own country, but he's also, I don't think he's, a cheap shot for the people who might want to plaster their name all over him.
Well, exactly. One thing that, obviously, not knowing anything about the man personally, but he does seem like he has integrity, and I think that's a genuine thing in him.
Well, you've seen him interviewed, as I have, and once you get past the fact he's not speaking in his natural tongue, some fighters come across as having integrity and intelligence. They're bright guys, some of them, and I think he comes across very much that way.
I agree. Brilliant. All right, Nick, anything else you want to add on that?
No. There you go. There's the T-shirt. Unstoppable.
Nice.
That's very nice. They use the "un" from the Undisputed, and they use "un" everywhere, which is good. Okay. Nice hook.
Well, if you send me one of those, I'll put it on in the next episode.
I will arrange for one to be sent to you.
I'm a 42.
I don't have a stash of them, and obviously, hopefully, the merchandise will be flowing nicely, and of course, I'll keep you in the loop.
Love it. All right, Nick. Well, now we're going to stop this one and we'll wind straight into the proper episode of the Boxing Bug. Thanks a lot.
All right, mate. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Yeah. Nick, good afternoon.
Hi. Nice to be here.
I'm really excited because finally got hold of you. I know it's taken a little while. Took a little bit of persuasion for you to come on, but you finally agreed. So I know you've got some strong opinions. You give them, you hold no quarter. So I'm looking forward to hearing about your journey into the sport.
Excellent. Yeah. It was obviously we came across each other by accident and I was responding to your posts.
Yep.
And never hold back.
Absolutely. That's what I like. Okay. So what was your first boxing memory? Is there a fight that stands out that you remember?
Yeah. So my first memory is probably as an early teenager. That may be the same for most of us, 12, 13, which, believe it or not, is half a century ago. And I remember some of your older viewers will remember this sort of thing, going to the cinema with my father to watch in the night time, in the middle of the night, to watch world title fights.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you could watch them live back in the early 70s or mid 70s. And obviously, we were watching Ali, Foreman, Frazier, these guys.
Wow.
And I guess the first fight that I genuinely can recall sitting and watching was the Rumble in the Jungle. I mean,
Wow.
big start, you know, it's like, doesn't get much better. So that was October 74.
Yeah.
And I would have been 13.
So do you remember the build up? Do you remember the significance of it? Did you have a favorite?
I don't really remember the build up. I don't think you followed the build up when you were that age. I remember it being massive. And I do think that, and it was good that my father was a fan of the fights. And it's just like, I don't think people today have any concept of how famous Muhammad Ali was.
Right. Wow.
I mean, he was without doubt the most famous person on the whole planet.
Yeah.
And because of his charisma, he was on television all the time. Everybody wanted to win all the time. But I do remember everyone thinking Foreman was going to beat him.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, he was a beast.
So in 74, are you saying he was at the height of his fame even then, or that it grew over time as the?
No, I think he was. I think he was the most famous man in the world from about the mid 60s until he stopped fighting.
Yeah.
And you know, as you may remember from 2000, when they presented the sports personality, they did a sports personality of the millennium.
Yeah.
And it was Ali, and he was there.
Yeah.
And it was presented to, I can't remember who it was presented. I think it was Bono who presented it, you know, the U2 singer.
Yeah.
And if you remember, Prince Charles was in the audience.
Right.
And Bono looked at him and said, when Muhammad Ali walks into a room, everybody stands up, even you.
Wow.
And, you know, and that was 2000. And obviously it was sad then. But I still send the odd clip to the younger members of my family who are boxing fans and say, watch this. Look at his feet. Look how he's moving.
Yeah.
And
I bet they're surprised that he's even a heavyweight, seeing that speed and footwork.
Yeah. Then the speed of his hands and feet and how he's gets out of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, look, going back to the question, nobody thought he was going to win.
Yeah.
During the fight, everybody thought he was losing.
Yeah.
We'll never know whether rope-a-dope was a tactic from minute one.
Yeah.
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Because basically you've seen all the stuff after when he's saying, is that all you've got, George? And all that sort of stuff. And Foreman himself admits he burns himself out.
But I think that the answer to that is a good answer either way. Either it was a premeditated tactic, in which case it was genius, or he made it up on the fly, in which case it was genius. So either way.
Yeah. I mean, I would, you know, we'll talk later about greatest and all that sort of stuff. But to me, it is the most genius tactic I've ever seen in a boxing ring.
Wow, amazing.
And I don't think that fighters, any fighter I've ever seen, had that brain.
Yeah. Do you remember watching it in the cinema then? Is it a crazy sort of atmosphere of people like screaming out of their seats and stuff, or was it like watching a movie? What was the atmosphere like?
It's more noisy than a movie.
Yeah. So it's like
it's not like it would be today, because today if you go to a public place to watch sport, everybody's pissed.
Yeah. but it feels like you're at the live event.
Well, having been to fights, no, but at the time it did. At the time, you thought, "Wow, this is really exciting." You know, and imagine I'm thinking I'm allowed up late. You know, this is one notch up from getting woken up to watch Match of the Day, which used to happen when we were little. Yeah. And then, you know, go to bed at 7, get woken up at 10, watch Match of the Day, and it's a level above that, and you're with the grown-ups, and your dad's there with his friends, and it's super cool environment.
Brilliant! What a memory! And so, what was your father's background in boxing?
Just a fan.
Yeah,
he was a rugby player of some high standard.
Right. What code?
As a young man, he played Union.
Yeah.
And he did England in the 19s when he was at school.
Oh, right.
And then he went to Liverpool Union and played for Waterloo, who were a big club then up in the north.
Yeah.
He retired when he was in his mid-20s. I think he developed asthma.
Oh, okay.
But he was a big sports fan generally. Yeah. And He was nowhere near as obsessive as I became.
Yeah.
But as I say, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier and George Foreman and those guys, Ken Norton, the heavyweights in that 70s era were so famous.
Yeah, right.
Because they were all so good.
Yeah. And they all fought
and
each
the
other.
fights were always good because they were close.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have this thing of they're dodging each other or they're ducking each other that is so common in modern boxing.
Well, I mean, without wanting to preempt anything, we will get to that later. And it's not modern boxing either. It's very, very recent.
Right. Okay.
But, you know, the beauty of that era, and if you read the autobiographies or the biographies or you watch the old films, as you probably have, by the time you fought for the world title in the 70s and any time earlier than that, you'd already beaten most of the top 10.
Yeah.
It was almost like a ladder system. You had to work your way up.
Nice. So your father was a good sportsman. I know you were big into your training as well. Did you ever box?
I trained in the gym. And I did the boxing training.
Yeah.
No, I did the training and I sparred a few times when I was in my late teens, but I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, the honest answer is, and it must be the case for the majority of us, you know, I had a few street fights when I was first going out and couldn't handle my beer. But the honest truth, which I think must be true for most of us, is I didn't mind hitting people, but I don't like getting hit.
Yeah, valid. Right.
I didn't have the willpower to walk through getting hit.
Yeah.
And I learned that really early on. But I continue, and still a bit today, do some of the workout stuff's amazing. Boxing training's the best training.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cardio, strength, everything.
Yeah.
And, so since those 70s sort of heyday, who's been your favorite to watch?
Well, I was going to say the first fight I went to live, the first fight I bought a ticket for and went to was also, I think, a lucky, you know, a good one to have on your CV. Like saying you bought the first Beatles single. Yeah. So the first fight I went to live was Barry McGuigan and Pedrosa at Queen's Park Rangers.
Wow.
Because I lived in a house full of... I'd just come to London to start work, having, you know, whatever, been educated, 23. And I was living in a house literally where all the other people in the house were Irish.
Wow.
And we rocked up and we got tickets and rocked up to Queen's Park, Loftus Road.
Yeah.
And watched a brilliant fight and a brilliant performance.
Do you remember?
In my opinion, one of Britain's best ever boxers.
Oh yeah, big fan of Barry. Do you remember what the attendance was? It a crazy gate there?
It was, well, all four sides were tickets.
Yeah.
The ring was in the centre circle. I mean, I've been to others since where it's in a football stadium.
Yeah.
But it was obviously, we all tend to look back on these things with rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah.
And in my memory, I was one of the few people there who wasn't Irish.
Yeah.
Everybody was boozing.
Yeah.
And we went up to like Kilburn High Road and Cricklewood after the fight and nobody went to bed. That's my memory of it.
Yeah, quite nice.
And it's like, yeah, let's enjoy it with the Irish. But yeah, brilliant fight, brilliant fighter. It sort of saddens me in a way that I think his profile has dropped because of his son and because of he had a few issues, didn't he, with Frampton and stuff. And I just think at the time, again, that was a decade later, wasn't it? That was in the mid-80s.
Yeah.
At the time, he again was huge as a celebrity, and everybody liked him because he was the little boy from United Ireland and all that. And those of us who are boxing fans watch footage now. He was one of the dirtiest fighters of all time. Barry was.
Oh right, didn't know.
I mean, he liked it. He knew the dark arts.
Oh wow, interesting. But like in terms of his popularity, I think that holds through now. He is still incredibly well liked and respected.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think the heritage that he's brought to the sport. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I had a 15-year-old son who had done a bit of amateur boxing and was looking half decent, absolutely the person I'd want to coach him would be Shane. I think Shane McGuigan's the best coach. Oh,
that's interesting.
That series that BBC did about his
the stable.
Gym,
yeah,
you know, his stable. He's like making a Kronk in the UK.
Yeah, brilliant.
And the whole vibe there.
Yeah.
And the thing about him, of course, which this isn't a judgment of anybody else, is because of his background, which of course nothing like his father's. You know, he's a posh kid.
Yeah.
When you listen to him talking to his fighters, he's
Yeah.
just so articulate
Yeah, right.
and so intelligent.
Yeah.
He did punditry, didn't he, on the
AJ Dubois. He
yeah,
had that,
and I thought he was one of the best pundits I'd ever heard.
he did that brilliant moment of literally, I think it was AJ Dubois. He literally called AJ. He saw what AJ was doing wrong, and it was like he'd seen through.
He
a
read the
crystal
fight
ball.
perfectly, didn't he?
He did.
He was like 10 seconds ahead of the.
That's
action.
exactly what happened. Yeah.
And
So-
I was just like, wow, and I was watching it, and I was messaging my pal, who's I knew was at home watching it, saying, Shane McGuigan's amazing, isn't he? He's like, he's just literally knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah, he went viral after that. So what about so was that McGuigan fight? Was that the first fight you saw live?
First fight I ever went to live, yeah.
Yeah. So, but the question was, who's the best? Who's your favourite to watch since then?
Since then, I mean, given my vintage, I have to say, okay, I don't think there's been anything like the Four Kings.
Yeah.
The real Four Kings.
Yeah.
You know, the Hearns, Hagler, Leonard, Duran.
Yeah.
5-year span when
Yeah.
they all fought each other. To me, boxing doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. No.
It's because they were all super elite.
Yeah.
Super elite.
Yeah.
You know, I felt sorry for Tommy Hearns because in a way he was my favourite and he was born at absolutely the wrong time despite all the belts he collected.
Yeah.
Because at that period, and then over on our side of the pond, we had like the championship version of that with Eubank Ben, Stevie Collins to an extent, Michael Watson. They were almost like our Four Kings.
Yeah.
But that was that was one of the best eras for British boxing as well in recent times.
Absolutely.
Because again, when people are evenly matched and there's more than just two of them, it's fabulous.
That's right. Yeah.
But my favorite era. I mean, look, I'll be glued to the television this weekend, and I am most weekends, and I enjoy, undercards and stuff.
Yeah.
But the things I look at and scroll through, and I've watched the first round of Hagler and Hearns, as many times as probably most people in the world. I can watch it now.
Yeah.
It's the most remarkable, 180 seconds of boxing history.
Yeah. So I don't think anyone would argue with you about that era in that weight division being as good as it gets. And I think, like you say, our own Four Kings in the UK, we were kind of spoiled. That was more sort of my era coming through, seeing Eubank and Ben. But
it's probably 10 years after, wasn't it?
Yeah. So do you have a favourite weight division? Is it the middleweights, the super middles?
Well, I thought about this because I thought you'd ask me this. And I did think about it for quite a while, because obviously the divisions have differing profile, don't they? Vastly differing profile. So, the man in the street thinks that the heavyweight division is the blue ribbon, and all that, big guys knocking each other over and stuff like that. And I think traditionally they've got the most money and the most publicity. But when I thought about it more, I came to the conclusion that because the middle divisions have more people that are born that size, more people are average sized, then those divisions tend to produce more good fighters, which make for more close and even fights. You don't have light middleweight, super middleweight, like the heavyweight division, where there's only two people who can ever win the championship. There's always a conveyor belt of good fighters. And over the piece, I would say those middle sort of 11 to 12 stone guys,
Great.
They've always produced the best.
Yeah, it's that, like you say, I completely agree. It's that distribution of the average person. Like the average man in the UK is probably about 12 and a half stone. So that puts you at your 12 stone limit, super middleweight, around there.
I mean, you're saying that if that sort of segues us into like who's the best fighter, who's the best fighter in the world now, then I was reading Eddie Hearn's ridiculous comments the other day, because for me, the best fighter in the world now, I don't think there's even a debate about it, because I think it's Inoue. I think it's Inoue by distance.
Oh yeah,
because he's so small, and he's only in Asia.
Yeah,
you talk. For me, Crawford's fantastic, and Usyk's fantastic.
Yeah.
My issue with Usyk is people in the earlier eras were better than him, in my opinion. Okay. I think Lennox Lewis sits at every fight smiling because he'd fight both of them in one day.
Okay,
honestly think that.
Okay, so let's get into that. So we're jumping around here. Okay, so Usyk, obviously man of the hour. Everyone loves Usyk. So who? Yeah, at heavyweight then, who's your number one?
Ever?
All time. Yeah.
Oh, that I think it's Ali, just because of the intelligence.
Yeah, and then
the ability to work out how to win. I think he's the only person who would have beaten Pete Tyson.
You think
he's worked out how to do it?
He's the only person who would beat Pete Tyson.
He's the only person that I would put money on before the fight to beat peak Mike Tyson, because he is the only person in my understanding of the sport who I think would have worked out how to do it.
Okay, what about George Foreman, Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield? How would they get on against Mike Tyson?
Well, a couple of them beat him, didn't they? But you mean it's peak? Interesting, because you would argue, as people have with Usyk, that Holyfield was actually a cruiserweight, pumped up, great fighter. Foreman, Foreman against Tyson, there'd be 3 punches thrown, and the one that landed 2 would win. That would just be a scrap, wouldn't it? On the cobbles. I think Lennox Lewis is one of the greatest British fighters of all time, and I put him in the top 10 of all time of heavyweights, because he had the footwork, the speed, the skill. Great fighter, absolutely great fighter.
Yeah, and he the ring IQ. He was the perfect physical specimen. 6'5", not too tall, but like massive in the modern era.
He had 2 defeats, didn't he?
Yeah, McCall and
flash knockdowns.
I mean, yeah, you reckon? Kind of brutal knockdowns.
Yeah, but they were his mistake rather than the other guys.
Yeah. His complacency. Although the McCall hit him with a good shot. That shot McCall got him with, I reckon that would have put anyone in trouble. Oliver McCall was a very good fighter, I think. No one talks. Yeah. No one talks about him because of the tears and everything. But okay, so Lennox, Lennox prime up against Tyson's prime.
The reason why I don't put Mike Tyson in my own GOAT list, and I'm probably the right age to have watched him coming through from junior, and he deserves honourable mentions in any conversation. But he was, to me, he only had one way.
Yeah.
And it was all out war from the first bell.
Yeah.
Sophisticated scrapping, if that's a fair phrase.
Yeah. And
I don't think that in his peak years he ever had to deal with any adversity. There was no one that tested him.
Yeah.
And I think that's my honest view. I think that he has 10, 12, 15 fights on the bounce where he's burying people, and some of these people weren't rubbish. They'd had great records, and Larry Holmes was a bit old. Pinklon Thomas was a good fighter. He had a great record, and he just steamrolled these guys. But that was it. He steamrolled them. He was never in a chess match.
No,
in his early years.
I think the damning stat about Mike Tyson is that there are 2 that stand out for me. One is that if you break his 50 fight career, what it is, 60 fights he's had, whatever it is, into 2 halves. So the first 30 fights he had a 95% knockout ratio. The second 30, he's got like a 53% knockout ratio. So it falls off as soon as he steps up. And the other thing is,
I think there's 2 factors there, don't you think? I think there's 2 factors there, apart from age. One was that he abused himself a lot and didn't train properly and drank and took drugs and all that. But I think the second factor that may not be as significant as his own decline is that people worked him out a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, the James Buster Douglas fight, although there were all these stories about what Tyson had been up to, I read an article in the Ring magazine shortly after, and it was James Buster Douglas's 5 minutes of fame. But between him and his camp, the article was saying he worked out the most genius strategy. Yeah. And you may not know this, but apparently James Buster Douglas had inordinate, almost disabled long arms. Like they hung right down by his side, almost to his knees.
Wow.
And they said, keep him on the end of the jab.
Yeah.
Because he won't get near you.
Well, so that performance by Douglas was a brilliant fight. Like everyone
one in his career though. I mean, he turned up to his first defense, didn't he? Like 2 stone heavier and all that.
Yeah.
But that, some people in all sports have just that one moment.
Yeah.
And I think for him, he was the first person to legitimately, in my view, put Tyson on his arse and, and
of course.
Through tactics.
I also think people like the Tyson fan base will say he didn't train for that fight. And that's easy to say that. But he came in at 223 pounds. He may have trained 80% of his potential, but he was in shape and he had trained. Yeah. He hadn't trained enough, but this thing of like, oh, he didn't train at all. No. Tyson, if Tyson doesn't train, he weighs about 280 pounds. He definitely trained for that fight. He just was expecting to. I think someone else made a point that he was the best 3-round fighter in history. And as soon as he got out of that 3 rounds against Douglas, like you say, there was no plan B. And
what do you do? What's next if you can't knock someone out?
Right, exactly. So that's the other point.
That was his flaw.
The other point I was going to make is that after round 7, he's got one stoppage in his entire career. He never stopped anyone late.
Yeah. So as dramatic and as exciting as he was, and I don't think any of us will forget the first big fight against Trevor Berbick. That was just you thought you were watching a cartoon or something. It was unreal, and people who'd never seen him fight before in his build-up fights were literally amazed. It was like watching Popeye the Sailor Man or something. It was insane.
Nothing has come close to that excitement of the minutes before a Tyson fight back in those 80s and 90s when he's coming in like a caged tiger. Yeah. So moving on from Iron Mike, what about you've obviously studied the sport for a long time. Is there any rule that you particularly dislike that you would change if you could?
Well, I touched on it earlier, and it's not a rule. It's more of not a rule. It's more of an evolution of what's happened. I personally would like to see fighters do more working their way up before they get to a title shot.
Yeah, okay.
I think that we're in an environment now where, and I'm not knocking these guys at all, I think they're great for the sport, but there are so many different bodies, but we're in an environment now where Bob Arum, Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn decide who fights for world titles.
Yeah.
And it's all governed by purses and what stadiums they can get. And I think the idea of people getting a world title shot with their like 12th fight or to me, I think that's ridiculous. I mean, some of them go on to win, but I would personally prefer a ladder system. In terms of rules, I think science is sophisticated now, so I think there should be a zero tolerance policy on drug taking. You get caught once, you're banned for life.
Wow.
That's my view. Get out the sport. And whenever there's a debate or a complaint or a protest, the science is always right, ultimately. And I think that they are soft on people. And I don't like that. And the other thing, which is a rule related, something's got to be done about judging. There's got to be a better way of judging.
Yeah.
There are too many fights that I watch on television where me, Carl Froch, Johnny Nelson, Uncle Tom Cobley, everyone just look at it and go, that is not what happened.
Yeah.
The last fight I went to was in Glasgow, Jack Catterall and Josh Taylor.
Yeah,
that is
wow.
the worst decision I've seen in half a century.
The first fight. So
Pardon?
The first fight.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
He didn't win 3 rounds.
Yeah.
And
Taylor,
he
how close were you?
schooled him and slapped him around the ring.
How close were you to the ring?
Well, my business partner is friends with Jack's father-in-law.
Okay.
So we were quite close. We were close enough for the Scottish correspondent of the Boxing News to be sat directly in front of us.
Right.
He turned around and went, "You boys were robbed.
Yeah. Okay. So
Completely robbed."
do you score the fights when you watch them?
I mean, I don't sit there making hash marks on a bit of paper, but
No.
I do the at the end of each round, I'll go, "Yeah, he won that."
Yeah. Okay.
Or he won that. I think that's. Don't you think that's what most of us do?
Yeah. Most people. I score every fight I watch because I know it's so controversial when people get into he was robbed and you're like, well, what was the scorecard? But what is the drugs?
Sorry, just to end that point, one of the things that Usyk is genius at is winning the last 45 seconds.
Oh yeah, nicking.
I mean, that's just. But again, that's why you look at the judging sometimes and you think we've all watched rounds where one fighter dominates for the first 2 minutes, another fighter dominates for the last minute, and that fighter wins the round.
Yeah,
and it's like.
Okay, so on those Usyk Fury fights, did you see anything controversial in those decisions? Were you happy? You think it was a clear Usyk win both times?
Yeah.
And Beterbiev and Bivol, that was controversial.
Cigarette paper between them two, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. I'm looking forward to their next fight more than any.
Yeah, same.
Because I just think they're so evenly matched.
Yeah.
That's the kind of fight I want to watch all the time.
Yeah. So, gun to head, how do you see that one going?
Berbetiev wins that, I think.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, look, it's a coin toss, isn't it? And relating to your other interests, my experience of having a flutter on the fights is it's my league.
Yeah.
Because I'm too emotionally invested, so I don't. Yeah. I tend to back the people I like.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I'm backing Bivol, so we'll talk about that one in a few weeks.
Yeah, no problem.
What about so the drugs thing? Zero tolerance. I agree. To cheat to that extent in a sport that is so dangerous and your intentions are to inflict harm,
exactly,
is absurd. But I'm sure. Is the science good enough? Can you not have a dodgy protein shake or?
Well, probably one area where they ought to analyze the science more is the other side of that coin, which is let's study what effect these things really do have. Do they really make that much difference?
I think so.
Greg Rosetsky had a massive test failure, didn't he, when he was pro tennis player?
Did it?
And that was freakish because it was so big that it was like, how did it get into your system?
Yeah.
But the ultimate conclusion when he went to a hearing is that the particular drug that he took, which was one of these, the normal sort of short impact stimulant things, that's not helping a professional tennis player who's playing for 3.5 hours.
No, exactly. But I from just being involved in gyms around here, I do think that I've heard by people who have taken those drugs that once you take them for a period of time, you have the benefits in your system for the rest of your athletic life. Even if you stop, if you've done a 6-month course, you have whatever you've done, the resistance you've built up, the ligaments that have got tougher, all of that stays with you. You come off, you're still, even if it's 1%, you're still a better athlete than you were 10 years later because of what you did.
Yeah, and you have this marginal gains thing that people talk about, and that David Brailsford thinks he invented. And, you know, I get all that. And, you know, I always think from talking to people like you in gyms and probably like you knowing people who juice and people who don't.
Yeah.
You know, it's the marginal gain to me is the fact that it gives you the capacity to train harder.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and that can't be unbeneficial.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like you say, on the one side, the science should be looking very closely at what these drugs do and do they actually make a difference?
Yeah.
And on the same, how can you control the intake better? I mean, you could go to extremes. Do you know who Ben Challenger is?
No.
High jumper.
Okay.
His father is the drummer of Shwadi.
Okay.
Romeo Challenger.
Right.
So Ben was a GB high jumper. They live close to me, and his father is a friend of mine.
Okay.
Ben had it written into his contract with GB Athletics that he would only ever eat or drink anything that was handed to him by his mother.
Wow. You serious?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. But
he could tell you stories about athletes that you've heard of who were cheating.
Well, this is the thing with the boxing. You know, you don't have to go very far down the list of household names, and there's a lot of accusations going around. You know, throughout history. Yeah. So
and people who failed more than once.
Yeah.
Dillian White, how many times has he failed? Twice.
And yeah, and then it's like a certain type of steak got in the system, or it's the eggs and all this stuff.
Fury eating boar meat.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, but yeah. So anyway, it's a wonderful sport, and let's just assume those are outlier cases.
Now, yeah.
And what about? So I've seen some of your hot takes over the last few months. So give me an example where you've just seen a fight recently, if possible, but go back in the archives if you want.
Yeah.
Where you just had a hot take and you thought, I knew that was going to happen.
Oh, that's a good question. It is a good question.
If it's easier to think of one where you've got it wrong, we can do that as well.
I've got loads where I've got it wrong. Having praised Shane McGuigan,
yeah,
I didn't give Chris Billiam-Smith a glimmer of a chance in his last fight because I don't think he's very good.
Wow. Okay.
And I think Richard Riakporhe must be having sleepless nights about not beating him.
Yeah.
Because I thought Richard Riakporhe would end the Chris Billiam-Smith story.
I did too that night a few months ago. 6 months ago, 8 months ago. I think that is a hot take because I think CBS gets a lot of respect. So yeah, okay.
No, but to me he looks ungainly.
Yeah, I don't see. Okay,
and you know what I mean. And it's like,
he's very effective at what he does. But perhaps there's some fundamentals. Yeah, that is a hot take. Okay, what about when you got it wrong?
I wasn't remotely surprised when Smithy beat Eubank Jr. and I was surprised when Eubank Jr. won the rematch because I don't have a high regard for Eubank Jr. either.
So sorry, you weren't surprised at the upset the first time round, but you were surprised.
I expected Smithy to win that.
Well, right, okay. And would you bet on those sort of fights when you're getting big underdog money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have had not a lot of money, but I'll have had I did have a few quid on our boy the Scouser to win that one.
Yeah, nice. And
I might have a few quid on the next one, the Suns.
Yeah, what do you think about that one?
I don't think that. I'm concerned about the weight differential and the strength differential. I think that if they went in, if they were the same size naturally and they went in together, I think that Eubank Jr. would be very fortunate to be in the same ring as Ben. I think the difference in class is vast.
Do you? Okay, so given the weight differential that is bringing them, so given what they are, and Eubank is aging, and Ben is unproven, how do you see that going?
I think Ben will win by knockout.
Do you?
And I think he'll win by knockout in the first half.
That's brilliant. Love that.
Because He's so skillful, so fast. He's a far better fighter than his father was, and I idolised his father.
That's incredible.
And technically, I mean, in my opinion, technically, I think Nigel, as he showed against Jared McLennan, would go to war. He wouldn't mind if there was two fighters in the ring.
Yeah.
I think his son has grown up in an environment where he's a sophisticated boxer.
Brilliant. I love that, Nick, and that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you, because I knew you'd leave me speechless at least twice, and that is.
Well, don't you agree?
I disagree with you, but I'm prepared to be proven wrong. I've had a lot of people ask me my opinion on that, and I'm sitting on the fence. So
I think Christopher,
I might come to your way of thinking, but now
I think Chris Eubank is a very good second level fighter.
Interesting.
I think that his father, although he didn't seem to help him much at ringside, I've seen his father speaking on shows like this. Yeah. And I think you almost get the sense from his father that his father knows it as well, that he's not quite there.
Interesting.
You know? And I think his father, by the way, is completely right to say it's wrong for him to be forced to lose too much weight.
Oh, yeah.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
A lot easier to put it on.
Yeah. And you're right. About 15 years ago, Eubank Senior was saying Eubank Junior was going to be the best ever, beat Golovkin, do all these crazy, go 50-0 undefeated. Doesn't say that. He's changed his narrative somewhat. What about?
I think he thinks that he can win one of the lesser belts where they let the bloody number 15 fight someone, but I don't see it myself.
I worry about the age for Eubank Jr. as well. I think he is, his mid-30s now. I think 35, 36. I don't think his style lends itself to aging, particularly given his fast.
I don't know. You probably follow it closer than me. I don't know how dedicated and how hard he is as a trainer in between fights. He has a very celebrity lifestyle.
Yeah. I think he's teetotal. I think he goes out a lot, but I don't think he drinks. And I think that's
right.
A big factor. Yeah. But okay, there's a brilliant. I really enjoyed that section. That was fascinating. So what about, do you have a most overrated boxer all time or current, and also most underrated?
You're going to love this with your sort of G-ups that you're giving me to be controversial. Because we have to keep it high profile so that everybody understands who we're talking about, and we're not talking about Fred Smith from Kent.
Yeah.
Most overrated fighter of all time, in my opinion, is Floyd Mayweather.
Okay. Interesting. Tell me why.
Because he didn't win. The proportion of fights that he won by knockout was very low, especially in his later career when he was fighting elite fighters. I think he ducked opponents when it suited him in order to get his numbers up. And, it's difficult for people who followed the sport for only the last 5 years.
Yeah. Because
the person he ducked above all else is Amir Khan.
Yeah, well, okay.
Because peak Amir Khan, who had one flaw in his entire arsenal, which was, punch resistance, would not have got hurt by Floyd Mayweather. He didn't hit hard enough.
They very nearly made that fight. Odds were available for it, I remember.
I think that at the time when Khan was coming off the back of Devon Alexander, when he was absolutely at his peak training in America with Freddie Roach and all that. Yeah. I've seen an Amir Khan fight live, and unquestionably, in my opinion, Amir Khan had the fastest hands I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he had power for a small guy.
Yeah.
So last year, was it, or 2 or 3 years ago, we had to sit and watch the turgid fight he had with Kell Brook that was just done to pad out their pension funds.
Pointless.
Yeah. And in my opinion, if those two had fought each other when they were both at their peak, Khan would have buried him.
I agree, Nick. And I also felt, so this is a great one because I've never said this aloud. I also thought Khan had a good chance against Mayweather, but I've never said that to anyone before. But
because of hand speed and power, and the fact that he might have got sat on his backside 3 or 4 times, but he only got sat on his backside by people who hit really hard.
Yeah.
And Floyd
So-
Mayweather has no history of hitting hard.
Yeah.
And the fact, to me, why I say overrated is the people who deserve ultimate respect never duck anyone, never negotiate anyone, out the way, never do the old move over money and all that sort of stuff. I'm just trying to, of course, there were others, and I'm trying to be more current. In a 50-50 argument between Carl Froch and Joe Calzaghe about who ducked who, my money's on Joe ducking Carl, you see.
Yeah.
The young up-and-comer or the guy who's got the unblemished record.
Yeah. And then Collins ducked Calzaghe the
Yeah.
era before. In terms of Mayweather not having a decent KO rate, devil's advocate, I don't mind that. Like, two of my favorite fighters over the last 20 years have been Usyk and Calzaghe, neither of whom have huge knockout power. So I don't mind fighters winning over the distance.
I enjoy watching fights that other people think are boring because they're tactical battles, and like you do.
Yeah.
And I accept that, but none of the people you've mentioned, by the way, are in my GOAT category.
Yeah.
Because I think to be in the GOAT category, you have to be able. Not only do you have to have a brain and the strategy, as we were talking about with Tyson, you also have to be able to put people away.
Yeah. Okay. So
currently, just to finish,
Yeah.
currently, and I think this will be very topical over the coming weeks, I think the wider media and the general public are significantly underrating Joseph Parker.
That's
Daniel
great.
Dubois should not be talking about who he's going to fight next.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. That's a fascinating one as well.
Because I'm not entirely sure, I don't know about you, I'm not entirely convinced that Daniel Dubois is all that good. I think he's big and I think he hits hard, but you can't get them choking out of your brain, can you?
I know. I agree with you. And I think the amazing highlight destruction of AJ has really done some heavy lifting to put Daniel Dubois as this indestructible guy now. And Parker
said more about AJ to me than
does.
it did about Dubois.
And I rate Parker. He just does everything really well. Just
a consummate professional.
Yeah. I think
he's a guy who will have worked out how to beat Dubois.
Yeah. Fascinating fight. Yeah, that's giving me goosebumps.
He beat
Zhang
Wilder.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the thing with Wilder is I had Wilder to win the first 2 fights against Fury.
So did I.
Just because I thought that he couldn't avoid it for 36 minutes.
Same.
And I still think that when he gets up in the first fight is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in a ring.
Right.
How he gets up from that punch, and then joked in the press conference that AJ would still be lying there, because that is true. I think he would have been. And even in the second fight, I thought, again, it was more on the basis of he only has to land that punch once in 36 minutes.
Yeah.
But by the time of the third fight, I think his spirit was broken.
Yeah.
And I think he went into his subsequent fights, Wilder, with broken.
I agree.
Because 5 years earlier, he would never have lost to Zhang or Parker.
Yeah.
Not a chance. There was a period, I think, before Usyk finished his upward journey, when, in my mind, Fury and Wilder were the best 2 heavyweights in the world by a distance.
Yeah.
And none of the others, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, wanted to go anywhere near Deontay Wilder.
Yeah. It's crazy how quickly it all changes.
It would be great. He's 30. Is he 40 now?
He's 40 now, I think. He's 40.
He should pack it in, and it would never surprise me, still to this day, if he came out of retirement and they got him a Saudi fight against somebody like, I don't know, Dillian White or someone that level, and Wilder just came out for the first bell and smashed them through the ropes. That wouldn't surprise me.
I just think what we saw in those last 2 fights against Parker and Zhang, I just think the switch is off. There's something gone. He's just an old man now. I don't know if
he sucked his soul out, Fury.
Yeah.
And I think it happens to a lot of fighters.
Yeah.
There's a point when they just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, and I don't want to see him come back. I don't want to see him fight Joshua. I think he's possibly.
Who are you on about now?
I don't want to see Wilder fight Joshua.
No,
I don't want to see. Say again? Yeah,
Is that on the cards? Is that being
if
talked about?
If Fury stays retired, then I think AJ Wilder becomes quite a big stadium fight.
I can't see AJ avoiding the punch,
Yeah.
even now.
Wow.
I think he's a bit broken as well.
Yeah.
Mentally or in his soul.
Yeah.
You know, I think losing to Daniel Dubois will have hurt him because he would have not thought a couple of years ago that Daniel Dubois was even in his league.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, it's very easy to be cynical and say, who has AJ ever beat?
Yeah.
An old Klitschko.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he got up off his backside in that fight and was very heroic. He's looked terrible since the Ruiz fights.
He has. I think he and everyone gave him credit for going sort of the masterclass revenge of Ruiz. It wasn't a masterclass. It was just a regular fight. And then the doing well against Usyk, everyone was like, "Oh, hasn't he done well?" I was like, he still lost comfortably both fights, but yeah,
he's a notch above. But you know, I've had several friends of mine have basically said he's the 21st century Frank Bruno, isn't he?
Absolutely.
He's great until he fights anybody good.
I think so, exactly, and very well marketed, and yeah, good luck to him. And he's done amazing things.
Fantastically, the Hearn family, who I have known the father for a long time through business, that they've taken boxing up to another notch in terms of a commercial product, as they do with most things they touch. Of course, Fury and Joshua will fight.
You think that's happening?
Oh, and why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't they? I mean, it's not a fight that you would. It's not the fight it would have been 5 years ago. It's not. It's meaningless to boxing fans like you and I. Yeah. But the money involved will be astronomical. Yeah. The general public who don't follow the sport in any depth will love it. You know, it'll be a show. It'll be a great show. Yeah. And if they get 100 million each, as for their grand finale,
exactly,
neither of them would be sensible. I think the only thing that stops it is that Anthony Joshua still believes that he's got a future.
What and takes a different route.
I think he still believes that he's got a future to challenge for world titles.
Right.
With his record over his last 4 or 5 fights, he wouldn't have got. He shouldn't be near a world title fight.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. I agree. I think we do get that fight, and it will cross over, and it will be huge.
And then they should. I think Fury then will trot off into the sunset and be a WWE fighter or a pundit or a manager or whatever he wants to do, and that's great for him. And he just needs to keep training every day. Although every time I watch his videos, I think that's not training what he's doing. But you know, it's hilarious. But obviously, from what we've all seen, he just needs to keep himself busy. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so that was brilliant as well. So what about, is there a standout most surprising upset or best knockout or biggest upset you've seen that comes to mind?
Sorry, I'm moving. The best knockouts, personally, I've seen one on home soil and one on away soil. The away one's a bit older. When Tommy Hearns knocked Duran out in the second round of their fight, I was surprised he wasn't dead. I've never seen anyone hit that hard or fall that straight forward without bending their knees. Froch putting Groves away was just... I went to a book signing because, as you know, Nottingham's only up the road from me. Yeah. And I went to a book signing and it wasn't massively crowded, and I got to see him. And then when regular size guys like us meet middleweights, you can't get over how small they are.
Wow.
Because it's like on the television, they look big, but that's because they're standing next to somebody the same size as them.
Right.
And I had to tell him that, I mean, you know, I watched virtually every one of his fights, and he never threw a punch like that in his entire career. Yeah. And it is the greatest punch you'll ever see. To fold a man in half.
Well,
it was remarkable.
so
And if
I
he
mean,
wants
Nick,
to go on, but boasting
that is
about it,
that is the right. People use that phrase, folding, but that's
Yeah.
exactly when you hear that phrase. That is the fight I think of. That is what
Yeah.
happened.
he was folded in half,
Yeah,
and it was redemption, in my opinion. And I will say this, that I think Carl Froch is a very good candidate for the best British boxer of the modern era.
yeah,
He was so, you could tell he was so angry about the first fight because he hadn't taken George seriously. He hadn't mentally prepared properly. I don't believe they don't physically prepare properly, like you said about Tyson earlier. And I think he went into that fight thinking he was going to easily win.
yeah.
And then the stoppage was, I think the stoppage was a good stoppage, legitimate. I think Groves was about to fall over.
So the first fight,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought the referee was already ready to get hold of him. Carl was 2 punches away from hurting the lad. But it looked bad.
Yeah,
He got a lot of stick for it. They set up a second fight, which was the biggest fight at Wembley until recently.
Yeah.
And it was sensational. And I went with my friend.
Oh, wow.
When George Groves did his ring entrance on the top of a red London bus,
Yeah,
I think he lost any fans he'd got because people just thought, what a twat.
Right.
And he's turned out to be quite a likable fella since, hasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, very much.
But I just think Carl went into the ring thinking this is redemption. This is proving a point. And he wasn't the kind of fighter who knocked people out in the second or third game, was he?
Yeah.
He was the kind of fighter who said, "You hit me as many times as you want, and guess what? I'm still here."
Exactly. Yeah, that was crazy. It was one punch knockout power that we'd never seen before from him, and it
From
really
him?
surprised. Yeah, I was surprised. I thought Groves was all wrong for him. I was a huge fan of Groves, and I was very confident that Groves would get that win in that rematch. So I was shocked by that.
Well, I went to Bramall Lane when Kell fought Spence. That was embarrassing.
Yeah.
A tough watch that was.
Yeah.
And George was on the undercard, wasn't he? And I think it was. He fought beautifully.
Yeah.
He fought beautifully. But like you say, if you describe Carl, I think you'd begin with hard. He's so hard.
Yeah.
He's just a hard man,
Yeah.
Working in doing the door in his mum's pub when he was like 14.
Did he?
And some of his fights, he gets battered
Yeah.
for long periods. And it's like, he's like that Monty Python sketch, isn't he? Superficial flesh wound.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then he turns it on in like round 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
I mean, how many fights did he win in those rounds?
Yeah, exactly. And some
He's
in
a
the last
tough man.
9 seconds, yeah. And for the sake of clarity, I would not dwarf a super middleweight. That would be my weight division. So,
I don't mean vertically. I mean, when you're into your 50s, mate, you'll be stood next to, I don't know, heavyweight and thinking, we weigh the same.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Look, give me what's the worst piece of sportsmanship you've seen in boxing?
I don't get past the ear biting, can you?
I think it's hard to. Yeah. Okay.
I was trying to think about the questions you would ask, and the ear biting is. I wanted to think of something else, and I just couldn't, because it was like short of somebody bringing a gun into the ring.
Do you remember watching that?
I thought Alexander Usyk was very, very unsporting against Dubois. That's never a low punch. Never, ever, ever.
Ooh, okay.
You want to put your waistband up there and he hit you on the actual band. You watch it over and over again. That's not a low punch.
Interesting. Okay. So, I mean, again, it's hard to put that up there with biting a guy's ear off.
Yeah, exactly. You're trying to think of things where you think, awful decisions. Sportsmanship is a strange one, isn't it? Because, it's you're saying to me, when did fighters cheat?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of, really.
That Tyson one it remains
It's
the most
just-
extraordinary thing I've ever seen happen on live sport. I just couldn't
You would
believe
expect to see it in a bare knuckle fight on a traveller camp. But no.
And the crazy thing is, they let the fight continue after he'd bitten him, and they said, right, 2-point deduction, carry on. Like, there was just so much
There's
money
a
in
chunk
that
of
fight.
flesh. There's a chunk of
Literally.
flesh on the canvas.
Literally, yeah, extraordinary.
I admired Evander Holyfield's restraint, because I think that if you bite a chunk out of my ear and I get you on the floor, I'm going to stamp on you and kick your head. I admire his restraint for not just losing it.
I know.
Turning it into a scrap.
He turned it into, right, let's just win. I'll just win this boxing match, continue within the rules. Okay, so is there anything you think you do differently when you're assessing a fight in terms of like the matchup ahead of it? You've come up with a few that are quite good predictions against the odds. So is there anything that stands out that you do differently?
I think I dig into my memory bank, as you do, and you do look at people's in your own mind. You look at people's previous fights and you think, what's their strength, what's their weakness? Does this guy do this? Thinking back again, it's not too far. So for most people, the British public went berserk over Ricky Hatton for a long time.
Yeah.
Colourful fighter. You wouldn't want to fight him in the road.
Yeah.
Going into all of his fights, I could never get away from, he doesn't train 365.
Yeah.
He's fat in between fights. That will catch you up. And if the other guy's not doing it, you're stuffed. I mean, the fact that Mayweather and Pacquiao are both light years better than him is a side issue.
Yeah.
That was what made me say, that was what always made me say he wouldn't have a chance. I have to say, and I don't know about you, going into those two opponents in particular, I always said very early win.
Yeah, no, I didn't feel they would be early, but I felt they were near certain that Hatton didn't have a chance in either of those fights. And the betting was very close, but there was no way.
The betting's close because of the British people piling in, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I just always thought, even when he was at the height of his fame, you've got to live like Marvin Hagler.
Yeah.
That's how you've got to live. You've got to be a week away from getting a call-up all the time. And otherwise, it was all. That's why I think the Fury thing with Wilder was so remarkable.
Yeah.
And then he boots Ben Davison out. No wonder AJ took him on straight away.
Well, that Fury, the Fury Usyk contrast is the same. Usyk, is never out of shape, and Fury is, barely ever in shape. But okay, I agree.
I think he's better than he was. He's better than he was, obviously, but he's not, and he's not an athlete. You can see and it's not always, ideal to be an athlete and to be a bodybuilder male model.
Yeah.
But and it was the 26 stone or whatever it was down to beating Wilder was utterly remarkable, amazing achievement.
Yeah,
but I don't think he's fit enough to be.
You sometimes see those Tyson Fury photos of him when he was like 30. I think he was 30 stone. It's unbelievable, and he's sort of
drinking 20 pints a day, taking coke. And it's I think what Ben Davison did for him was miraculous as a conditioning coach.
Yeah.
Whether he's a great boxing coach probably remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But I think as a conditioning coach, with Tyson's money, I'd have kept him there just for that job.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Look, Nick, we've almost done an hour, so let's wrap these up. So, do you have a favorite boxing quote? We've had some good ones over the years. Do you have a quote that sticks out?
In the first Frazier Ali fight, in the first Frazier Ali fight, which I believe was in Madison Square Garden, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Whilst the ref was giving them their instructions, Ali said to Frazier, "How tall are you, Joe?"
It's all right.
Joe just shook his head, and Ali went, "I need to know how far back to step when I knock you out."
Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you see that? Can you see that in the footage, or is that just
I think
folklore?
you can see them like moving their lips.
Wow.
But
Love that.
I just think in the moment when you're in the ring, that's what made that special.
Amazing.
I mean, there's been millions, hasn't there, of great.
I've never heard that. I didn't know that. I love that. Okay.
I like the Tyson one, which isn't his, from the philosopher about every plan's great until you get smacked in the mouth or whatever, along those lines. I love that sort of thing.
Yeah. What about, is there a standout, either book, movie, or do you have any boxing podcasts you listen to?
I watch and listen to Froch on fighting.
Yeah, it's good.
Because I find it disappointing that he seems to not be used by Sky anymore.
Yeah, well,
I think he's very straight talking.
Yeah, he's just recently got involved with the Saudis, hasn't he? So I think he's sort of changing.
You mean negatively?
Well, he's changing his.
He's in their good books now.
He's changing his straight talking honesty a little bit, I think.
I entirely agreed with him at the outset. You can't have a boxing crowd without a noise.
I know,
but it is getting better. It is getting better.
Yeah,
and you can't knock it. So I do listen to him. I've seen several episodes of Your Own.
Oh, great!
I love it when us laymen get a chance to express views.
Yeah,
the best movie is Raging Bull,
of course,
and the best book is The Four Kings.
Yeah, great, brilliant. Okay,
in my opinion.
Like final question, Nick. What is your entrance music if you were a pro boxer?
Oh my God, I hate walk-ons. I hate all that nonsense. I genuinely do. It really gets on my nerves.
You'd be in a London bus, presumably.
I mean, I saw something on the other day when an old one when Prince Nassim is on a flying carpet, and you just think, you absolute arsehole. I like the guys who literally just walk in because they're there for business.
Same.
And I don't think the walk-ons and the music and all that nonsense is for you and I. I think it's for the casual viewer. Yeah. I'd love to walk on in complete and utter silence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hush the room.
I think early Mike Tyson. He asked. I said, I want silence, and they were like, "No, you've got to do something, Mike." But he was like, "Just give me silence."
Yeah, I loved it. I just think whatever you do along those lines, if you wear feathered shorts or, as Ali used to do, the boots with the tassels on, and the frills on and all that, anything like that, dressed like a Roman knight if you're Deontay Wilder or the kid, you've got to win. Otherwise, you've got to win. Yeah. I think it's like adding pressure to yourself.
Yeah.
It's like playing football on a Sunday. If you buy a pair of orange boots, somebody says you've got to be good. You've got to be good to wear them.
Exactly.
And I just don't. It's not for me, that part. Yeah. I like the fight.
Yeah. So what is your song?
Did you watch it Inouye the other night?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
The other morning.
I saw the highlights. I've not watched it all.
I mean, obviously, maybe it's part of Japanese culture, but they're very sedate about it. In we go. Let's just get to work. He won easily, but of course, it was a substitute opponent. Although I don't think it would have mattered.
What is your ring entrance music? You haven't answered.
David Price stole it, and I don't want to do anything he did. I like You'll Never Walk Alone.
Okay.
I'd like Motorhead, Ace of Spades, something like that. If I'm going to have something, I want it to be dark and loud. Yeah,
that's a good shout. I like
all this rap stuff they have is, I suppose it's because the culture of the fighters, but I think it's. I like the fact that Fury occasionally picks something completely off the wall.
Yeah.
Like the 1950s.
Yeah. He had the old Christmas song the other day, didn't he? Jingle Bells or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, I can get that. But I've watched it from... I do think a lot of it is the Hearn influence, by the way, from the darts and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that even when I'm passing by that, which is... I'm not a big fan of anyway...
Yeah.
I do think the ones that get your tongue in cheek and do something like heavy metal is just funny.
Yeah.
I could go for that.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right, Nick. Look, that was really fun. I thoroughly enjoyed that. We'll put your socials and your links in the description, but just do like a quick summary of either your any websites that you own, run, or social media.
So the business website is www.globalgamblingnews.com.
Yeah.
And that contains, a dynamic news feed and a fortnightly digital magazine.
Yeah.
That's posted on there, and that also has its own LinkedIn account, which is Global Gambling News, obviously.
Yeah.
My private or my personal LinkedIn account, which obviously is largely business, is just Nick Hardy.
Yeah.
My Instagram is Nick Hardy 777.
Yep. Okay.
Jackpot. That's it. I don't do Twitter and stuff anymore.
No.
TikTok or whatever.
Yeah. No,
too
that's
old
great.
for all that nonsense.
All right, Nick. Well, look, thank you very much, and I hope you will post more about your boxing, because it's always very insightful, very interesting, and it comes from a deep history. So, yeah, keep at it.
Interesting. Insightful is an interesting one, because just to touch on your other areas of interest, as I said, it's a leak where betting is concerned, because I don't know about you, but I've always had this thought about you should bet with your head, not your heart.
Of course, yeah.
And I find it very different. That's why I never bet on football.
Yeah.
But I have with boxing, I fall into the trap, and all gamblers have a leak, don't they? And I just want my guy to win.
Right.
So I tell myself the ways he is going to win.
Yeah.
And it's not a very sensible way to go about that hobby.
You just undermined my praise of you for being insightful, but it still stands.
No, I mean, look, it's like yourself, and we're not blowing smoke anywhere to each other. I think some people just watch it because it's entertaining and it's sport.
Yeah.
And some people watch it with intent and interest and study it.
Yeah.
And I think we're both probably that.
Yeah.
We formulate opinions based on, I still think we formulate opinions based on what we like.
Yeah.
Personally, I think the best fighters are the ones with the biggest brains.
Yeah.
And I prefer guys who spark people out than turn it into a chess match.
Yeah.
And as we said, it's like watching the fight the other day, which you will catch up on. That kid, anyway, will break every record.
Yeah, you said. Yeah.
He could put 4 pounds on in weight.
Yeah. And
Nick Ball wouldn't hear the bell for the third round.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And
Big
then
fan.
he's got 5.
Yeah.
And it's just a question of how much weight does he want to put on before he retires, in my view.
Well, that's a great way to end, because, regardless of all the marquee divisions, there's a huge amount that he can do ahead as well. So we are spoiled.
Go to America, go to Saudi, make the money you deserve. Yeah. He's getting $2 million for a fight, and he's fighting at a level that the tempo that the heavier guys are getting 20 times as much. And I think it's really strange. Yeah. Can I ask you a question? Does Jack win next in his world title eliminator in Manchester in a couple of weeks' time? Barbiosa or whatever his name is.
Casserole. I mean, I always back Jack Casserole. So yeah, gun to the head. I think he's a slight favourite. What is he? He's about he's 2 to 5, 1.4. But yeah, Barbosa Jr. I think so. He's
another one. A bit like, if he could hit hard, like really hard, no one would beat him, in my view.
But I don't mind. I just really enjoy the way he goes about his business.
Great fight.
Some people think,
because we have a bit of a connection through my business partner, obviously, and I know how dedicated he is, and I know how wounded he was by what happened in Scotland. Yeah. And to him, he's carrying that with him forever, by the way, because he'll never get a chance to be unified ever again.
Yeah.
And I think he's also got a little roadmap.
Yeah.
Which is win a title, fight in Saudi, retire.
Yeah. He's just not that much of a crowd pleaser in the sort of traditional sense. But yeah, that's 2.5 weeks.
Did you see his video the other day, boring Jack Casserole?
No.
Oh, look on his Instagram, look it up.
Yeah.
He's made a promotional video, and it is funny.
Oh,
Because
great.
it's a bit like when Steve Davis, the snooker player,
yeah.
used to take the mickey out of himself.
Yeah.
And it is literally him saying, "Some people think I'm boring," you know,
Oh,
and
brilliant.
it goes on from there. And it is very, very entertaining because
Oh,
apparently,
yeah.
if you know him, he's not boring at all.
I'm sure. Nice. Seems
But,
like a good guy. Yeah. So
I mean,
we're trying to do it's 2 weeks. We're trying to get a preview out. We've just done. We've just released our what's it called? The who have we got? I've had a name. Benavides preview for Saturday coming up. So yeah, we'll get a nice preview out for Castrol as well.
Who's your favourite ever? You can turn the table before we leave.
So I'm a massive fan of Joe Calzaghe, Evander Holyfield. Yeah, probably those two.
And it's
Roy Jones. How do I forget Roy Jones? Those three would be, yeah.
It's just you see them now, don't you? Like Roy Jones scraping a living, training bloody journeyman. It's like you feel sorry for them because they've pissed their money away or whatever.
But again, it's like you were saying about the some of those Hagler Hearns and those fights. Like now and then, you see Roy Jones highlight reel come up again, and you just have to watch it all because it's just extraordinary and it just gives you goosebumps. And yeah,
you feel. I mean, we're just having a chat now. Sometimes I feel one of my son-in-laws, who is actually an academy coach at Leicester City.
Oh right.
Is into MMA, but not like fighting. But he's in these shoot fighters. You've heard of them, haven't you?
Okay. No.
They have these clubs called shoot fighters, and it's where MMA fighters are based.
Right.
And he does all the training, but he doesn't do enough to compete. And he's probably a bit old because he's mid-30s now, and he doesn't want to, I don't think. But he loves his fighting sports. I can't buy into MMA myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm too much of an old fart purist.
Yeah.
And I send him stuff like that round with Hearns and Hagler or Carl Froch. He's old. He's young. He remembers that anyway. Stuff from Ali, you know, footage of Ali dancing, and he's a heavyweight, by the way, that fella, you know, and all that, and Nassim and stuff like. He's got Joe Calzaghe memorabilia. He's of that age, mid to late 30s, where Joe Calzaghe was the man when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
And he'll argue with me all day long that Joe Calzaghe never ducked Carl Froch. And only the two of them know the truth.
Yeah.
And maybe only they ever will. But and I felt sorry for Calzaghe because he fought only on satellite television when satellite television wasn't very big. Lennox Lewis, you know, only ever had one fight on terrestrial TV.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So they sort of were under the radar because not everyone had Sky back then, did they?
Yeah. No, I remember it was difficult to watch them.
And you know, that's so he that sort of generation, which you're probably at the top end of.
Yeah.
Calzaghe was a big deal.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah.
But I send them stuff, and I actually like to watch old films like Mike Tyson. You know, let's see how good was Jack Johnson, how good was Joe Louis. You know, I watch them because. I mean, obviously, in my opinion, they're nowhere near as good. But you know, training's different. Yeah, everything's different, and comparing eras is for me. You know, these computer games. It's any sport, nutrition, training, preparation. Every single thing is constantly improving. Yeah. So I find it quite interesting that there are a great many fighters in 2025 who I don't think are as good as their predecessors because they should be. They should be better. Or we should be finding people who are better.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you mean. And I guess there are anomalies and outliers where, you know, somebody from either generation would absolutely test all the others from before or in advance in the future. But
do you think, in all honesty, do you think that the current crop of sort of middleweighted people, and I can include Canelo and Crawford and all of them in that, do you think that they would have steamrolled through the likes of Hearns and Leonard and Hagler?
No. I mean, I think they'd all be. I think that's like I'm saying. You could mix up those eras and still have good fights. Yeah, I think you said at the start, rose-tinted glasses perhaps elevates those 80s, but they deserve to be elevated. But I still think the modern elites, you know, Golovkin and those guys, Mayweather, they stand the test of time for me. But it is such a hypothetical; we will never know.
It is so hypothetical. I mean, I genuinely, like you, I love. I'm a great respecter of Usyk.
Yeah.
And what he's achieved, and 2 weight divisions, and all of that, and because he has a relatively quiet, you know, personality in terms of blowing his own trumpet, that also casts a thing over it. But as we were both saying earlier, Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, really against them, against them.
I think Usyk would. I currently think Evander Holyfield is higher on the all-time list than Usyk is because of his body of work. But I also think Usyk would beat Holyfield. I don't think he
would beat Lewis though, because the reason is that. But Tyson, you know, everybody around Tyson always went through this whole big and little and big and little and you're a pumped up middleweight and all that. Lennox Lewis was big and super fit.
Yeah,
and fast and skillful.
Yeah,
you know, and I think he had the assets that Usyk's got, and when you've got, then the size would have been the differentiator.
Lennox was a combination puncher. He had big power in both hands, and he had a good chin. People think he was chinny, but he did have a good chin as well.
Phenomenal the way he moved as well. I mean, he was the nearest in terms of dancing around the ring. He was nearest to Ali.
I think Lennox, if he had just been a little bit more aggressive, a little bit less defense, the second half of his career, he was very
too nice.
Yeah, if he had just stepped on the gas, he could have been bar none the best.
So here's my final point, and it nearly came up earlier about rules when I moaned about them not working their way up the ladder enough.
Yeah,
I looked this up recently when I was having a debate with somebody. An argument. I was calling it a debate, but it wasn't. It was an argument. Lennox Lewis, for the latter part of his professional career, 3 or 4 years, including when he was champion, fought 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that's not that long ago. That's 20 years ago. That was 2000, 25 years ago. But he fought as champion in 1 year. He fought 4 times.
Wow. Yeah.
We're lucky to get these heavyweights to fight once every 18 months. And I think that's partly because they get paid so much now that they don't have to.
Yeah.
But I think I'd be standing there. I'd be saying, if I was, what's her name, Suleiman or whoever, I'd contemplate saying you've 6 months to defend it. Otherwise you've lost it.
That's a great shout as well. Yeah, brilliant observation. Yeah, I didn't realize Lennox was quite that active. Yeah, brilliant.
Three definitely every year, and a couple of years there were 4.
I agree. Yeah.
Now, and he wasn't getting crap money then. He'd have been getting 20 odd mil for a fight, which exponentially would have. I mean, nothing like the Usyk and Fury, and I mean madness. Yeah. But the point is, the only people it suits Eddie Hearn because he's getting his 15% of whatever, and the gate money, you know, just bathing in money. It'd be interesting to watch the Netflix At Home with the Hearns, won't it?
Yeah,
when it comes on. I think people will be surprised how wealthy they are when they watch that. But it suits them, but it doesn't suit the sport. So the only way the sport can make more activity is to take belts off people.
Yeah.
That's as simple as that. You got to fight every... Yeah.
Let's wrap that up. So
I could be here for another 3 hours, as you know.
Yeah, exactly. So
we've done a load of work to catch up on.
We've just hit 1 hour 20. So, like I say, thanks a lot, Nick.
Now you'll chop it about. You've got my complete approval to do anything you want. I'm sure there's a load of crap in there, and there's a load of you and me chatting about stuff that won't be interesting to anyone else. So
that's fine. It's going out as it is, and I'm going to wrap it up now. Thanks a lot, Nick.
Good man. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.